Hello, welcome to WoWCast. I'm your host Bethany Stout, and today we're going to talk about Fractures in Time, the content update arriving on July 11th. With me, I have two special guests. Please introduce yourselves, guys.
My name is Stephen Cavallaro. I'm a senior game designer on the Encounter team, and I worked on the new Megadungeon, Dawn of the Infinite.
And I'm Berger, a senior game designer on the combat team, and I worked on the Augmentation Evoker.
So, what can you tell us about the story in Fractures in Time?
We're excited to be able to actually progress the mainline story in Dawn of the Infinite itself, the Megadungeon. Players are familiar with these two different plot lines, one of them being about the Bronze Dragonflight and the other being about the Primal Incarnates. And so what we're doing in the content update with Dawn of the Infinite is sort of telling a story that kind of brings those plot lines together. With the Bronze Dragonflight, Chromie is convinced that she can find a way to stop Nosdormu from ultimately becoming Burazon and sort of succumbing to this fate. And of course, Nosdormu isn't convinced that it's possible, but Chromie's gonna do everything she possibly can to try and save him. But the Primal Incarnates have their own plans, and in particular, Ridicron seems to have a plan of his own that we're actually not too sure of what it is. What we do know is that Ridicron has made some sort of a deal with the Infinite Dragonflight, and in fact is going to be going into the temporal complex, which we will visit when we enter the dungeon ourselves, to do something bad. And we need to go in there and we need to stop him from doing that. You know, I think one of the things that we want to explore with him in particular is this concept of who he is as a character. I think our fans have kind of latched on to this idea of him being a character who, while very, very powerful, seems to be more of a strategist, a planner, compared to someone like Farak, who seems more like
he's a loose cannon,
right? And
yeah.
he's super strong, but he's very different than, you know, the way that Ridicron seems to handle himself. And so, you know, getting to see how this plot develops with a type of character like that, getting to see him for the first time in game, getting to face off against him, and what is this, you know, plot or plan that he's made this deal with the Infinite Dragonflight. We're super excited for players to be able to see that all come together.
There's going to be some more story to the Evokers. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, so while it's not part of kind of the main plot line of the Bronze Dragonflight, certainly the Dracthyr are going to learn more about their history and their remaining lost memories. So if you're an Evoker, when you log into Fractures in Time, you'll get a call from Emberthal to meet with her and Abyssian and go and free Adamanthia and discover why were these extra memories and these extra abilities locked away from you, and what does it mean now that you've kind of regained them, and bring them to bear with your allies.
So we're finally going to get to go through those massive doors in the temporal complex. What will we find when we enter that?
So when players walk through those doors, we want to make it feel interesting and cool and in line with what players might expect from the Bronze Dragonflight. In this case, you're going to walk through and you're going to enter this Bronze Temple of Time. And it turns out that this is sort of the entryway into this teleportation system that leads into this sort of ethereal realm of time known as the Time Ways. And when you get inside there, there's sand streaming through the sky. There's all these different timelines that are potentially branching off from here. And in fact, you'll actually get to go back in time to ancient Dragonblight at the moment that it became Dragonblight. And so we're very excited for players to be able to experience that.
How do you make a Mega Dungeon? What makes the Dawn of the Infinite different than all the other dungeons?
As you mentioned, there's certain expectations that players have for a Mega Dungeon, and Dawn of the Infinite is no different in that regard. So 8 bosses, more epic, longer, you're gonna be spending more time in there. All the things that players come to expect from Mega Dungeon, we're hitting on. But what's different about Dawn of the Infinite, there's actually a couple things. One of them is that we're progressing the mainline story through this dungeon, which in the past, our Mega Dungeons have had cool, interesting things happening in them, but a lot of them are maybe more side plot, right?
Yeah,
in this case, this is the main storyline of the expansion being progressed, so we're super excited about that. And because of that, you know, we really put a lot of time into making sure that we were highlighting important lore characters. We have Chromie, we have Nosdormu. There's actually more RP lines in this dungeon than there have been in some raids.
Oh,
in terms
wow.
Of, yeah, there's a lot of
lot.
storylines, and you know, of course, Mythic Plus, we have considerations for. Not to scare any players. Players hear RP and they get afraid. You know, that's something we're planning for in the future. But in terms of more gameplay-focused things, one of the things that we're trying with this Mega Dungeon is actually releasing it at a difficulty level that's much higher than previous Mega Dungeons. Players are familiar with sort of this concept of hard mode.
Yes.
In this case, that is sort of the base difficulty level of Dawn of the Infinite.
That is different.
Yeah, and so one of the reasons we're doing that is there has been kind of a recurring request from part of the community for smaller raid-like experiences so that you can go into smaller party size but still sort of get to experience this idea of coordinating with your friends and progressing through content. And so that's kind of what we're trying to hit there with that. Because obviously Mythic Plus is super popular,
Yes.
we love it.
It's awesome.
But there are some players that want to have maybe a different experience with endgame content that doesn't involve raids, right? With a smaller party size, doesn't involve a timer. So this is something where you can kind of progress through like you would with a raid and kind of enjoy the content that way. So we're super excited about that. And to go along with that extra challenge, the rewards we're going to be offering in there are a little bit spicier than maybe previous Mega Dungeons. Yeah, so
even more reason to go in there
yeah,
at
yeah.
launch.
I think, you know, beyond just like gear, right, for upgrading your character, there's some cool things I think that some collectors will be interested in there as well. Yeah, I don't want to go into too much detail. I'll leave that as a surprise. But
I'll try to get that later.
If you're a transmog fan, you might be interested in some of the things that are going to be happening in there. So yeah, we're excited for players to get in there.
Suspenseful.
And of course, also, we're going to have the ability to get infinite dragon scales for your proto-dragon companions. So you get to ride an infinite dragon, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, who doesn't want to ride on an infinite dragon?
Exactly.
Finally join the faction that I really want to be a part of.
Exactly, yeah.
When does heroic mode for Dawn of the Infinite come?
Yeah, so obviously this is one of the considerations we wanted to make, knowing that we were going to be releasing this at maybe a higher level of challenge. We want to make sure that, especially because we are progressing the main storyline, that players have a chance to experience it within a reasonable time frame. So for the first time, we're going to be releasing heroic earlier than we normally would. It's going to be in 10.17. Upcoming, yeah. And so one of the questions we've sort of talked about internally is, why not release it right away, right? Why not release it with the Mega Dungeon? I think part of it is we want to give this sort of new format a chance to breathe.
Yes, that's true.
Right, and we want to actually encourage players like, hey, you know, there's not a timer, right? There's maybe just get together with your friends and go in there and explore it, right? What's the worst thing that can happen, right? You just make progress. You know, there's a lockout like you would expect in a raid, so you know, just get in there and try it and kind of see what you think. And so we wanted to give that a little bit more room to breathe, but at the same time make sure that we are serving, you know, all the community and being able to see the story and progress it.
Did you run into any design challenges when you were making the Mega Dungeon?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of interesting things.
I'm sure there were plenty.
Absolutely, yeah.
Please
You know,
tell us.
I think, I mean, certainly I kind of mentioned it earlier. With the amount of story that we're trying to tell, it's very important that we are sort of making everything we do mechanically and encounter-wise sort of help push that story forward. In particular, as I mentioned, we have a lot of major lore characters in there, and we want to make sure we're doing justice to that. So I talked about Iridacron earlier, but Galakron, we thought, you know, hey, it's a time travel dungeon, and we're dealing with primal incarnates. This is the moment we can finally show Galakron in all his gigantic glory. So you won't be fighting Galakron directly, you'll actually be going to sort of the moment of his fall. This is actually kind of going back to the story challenges I mentioned. We really wanted to sort of show players the effects of his death on what would eventually become known as Dragonblight. You'll kind of get to see why it's called Dragonblight. This is like very, very far in the past. You're going to be dealing with sort of the effects that are sort of spewing off of his body because he has these sort of almost necromantic energies oozing off of him from eating all the proto-dragons and becoming sort of, you know, sick with this power. Trying to sort of communicate that was definitely sort of a challenge that we went through multiple iterations on. I think ultimately we kind of settled on something that really drives home this sort of corruption aspect with the gameplay itself. And you know, you get to see dragons getting risen, and they have this buff called Relentless Hunger on them because, you know, this necromantic power, as you know, Galakron was a very hungry dragon. They're very angry. They, in fact, is an enraged. So, you know.
Hangry,
yeah,
okay.
Exactly, yeah. So we're excited about how that turned out. And then we have Morchi, right? Morchi is this sort of evil version of Chromie, the infinite dragonflight version.
Chromie can be evil?
I know,
Never.
right? Never.
What?
Never. Could never happen. But in this case, it actually does. It actually did. And so there's sort of this funny moment where like our Chromie and her meet, and they talk to each other, and you get a little bit of a sass between the two of them, and it's cool. Moving back over to Iridacron, this one was really important to make sure that we tried to sell what players have in terms of expectations about him. One of the things that players really picked up on when he was sort of first introduced as a character was this line that he has about like not underestimating players. And I think that goes along with this idea that he is more, like we talked about earlier, a strategic planner, more of a thinker. Of course, very powerful, don't get me wrong, right? Tons of power. But trying to get that to kind of come across in the fight was really important to us. We actually went through a lot of iterations on that fight. I think the core of it, you know, mostly stayed the same, but it's funny, actually, originally, Chromie wasn't going to be with you in that fight, which she is now in the final version. It was actually going to be Tyr.
Ah.
Yeah, it turned out when we were planning that out, we realized very quickly actually that doesn't work for lore reasons. The lore followers will know why we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So instead of Tyr, we were like, well, let's just have Chromie be with you, because we know that you can't fight a Ridicron just as yourself with no help. You need some sort of support.
Him as a dungeon boss was a little surprising to hear at first.
Exactly.
Right?
I think a lot of players were surprised to hear that.
Yeah.
So being able to figure out, okay, how can we use Chromie to kind of make it feel like this is a fight where you're at the edge of your seat from dying at any moment. Sort of your only hope is that Chromie is with you, right? Without her, you kind of have no chance. We tried some different stuff, like extra action buttons to use time abilities, but ultimately we thought, well, let's just like tie Chromie directly in where she's physically like teleporting around and like protecting you, and then she's exhausted, so you have to protect her. And this sort of cat and mouse game that we sort of ended up with, I think really kind of helps sell that feeling of what a Ridicron is, which is a really, really scary dragon that you don't want to be fighting.
How's the Dawn of the Infinite experience?
Overall, I think players are going to have a lot of fun getting to actually explore the time ways and see, you know, what's in here, what is this, and sort of getting this chance to experience different timelines in a way, right? Like there's a boss battle, the Time Lost Battlefield, where it's sort of this area of time pocket, if you will, where the Alliance and Horde are just fighting for all eternity, and you kind of step in the middle of this battle and you have to deal with that. Ultimately, there's a lot of different experiences in the dungeon, and I think it helps that because it is time related, we're able to kind of transport players to different things. And
yeah, there's a lot you could do with the time.
Exactly. So
infinite possibilities.
Exactly.
You did that.
Not if we have anything to say about it. We can't let the Infinites win.
Yeah,
we have
true.
to stop.
Yeah.
That would be bad.
So I know with previous Mega Dungeons, you know, we have it when we split it into Mythic Plus, it's the front half and the back half. And for Tazavesh, it was sort of you're doing the outside of the instance and then the inner part. What was that process for Dawn of the Infinite, where you're going into the time ways and it's all weird?
Right. Yeah, I think so. Obviously, having the time wave be a central part of it helps answer this question a little bit. But in particular, we wanted to make sure that whatever we did, players did feel like the second half was notably, you know, different than the first half. So one of the challenges we ran into is we knew that we wanted to do this sort of style of storytelling where you go through in the first half and you experience it one way, then something happens, which I don't want to spoil, players will find that out, and you have to go back through a second time, and things are different the second time. So you're going through some of the same areas, but things have changed. And then of course there's some different areas that you didn't go to the first time, and that's what we really wanted to highlight. In fact, one of a little bit of a thing of difference there is the first time through it's a linear experience, and then the second time through there is one small choice you can make in terms of the path that you go. You can sort of go to the right and you go to one of the bosses, or you can go to the left and you go to the other. And so there's a little bit of player choice there the second time through that help make it feel a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because ultimately the time ways is like a massive, massive space. And we wanted to make sure players felt like when they were going through there that they were traversing it and seeing like different platforms and things that they hadn't seen the first time to help kind of sell that this is this sort of ethereal area outside of time.
Yeah, well, and I love that for Mythic Plus too, or for Heroic, in that, you know, when you're choosing which trash packs do you want to deal with and what's most efficient for your group, you know, adding that choice is always cool.
Definitely, definitely.
What's the theme of the augmentation specialization?
Yeah, so augmentation, you're going to work with Emberthal and Abyssian to sort of discover where this power came from, do a little bit of questing with them, free Adamantia. That's not required to unlock the specialization. You just get it as soon as you log in if you're an evoker, or after you get through the Forbidden Reach starting experience if you make a new one. But they have unlocked their full sort of suite of magic from the Black Dragon Flight. And so they're going to wield that and pure Black Dragon magic, its defensive power, its empowering capabilities, along with Bronze Dragon magic, with the theme of the patch, and a different take on Bronze than what we've seen from Preservation. Preservation's all about rewinding time and repairing things. Augmentation is about modifying time a little bit, not the way the Infinite Dragonflight does it. Like, this is good modifying. It's totally fine, guys. But manipulating it, defying fate a little bit to make your allies capable of doing things they wouldn't be able to do on their own. So you're going to be casting spells like Ebon Might, giving the allies in your party the power of the Black Dragonflight and increasing their primary stat. Or casting a Spatial Paradox on your healer to let them cast while moving and increasing the range of their spells so that even if they're across the room, they can still save someone. That sort of thing.
finally can shrink while moving.
Yes, on a cooldown, you know, a little bit, but...
Why you gotta take things away from me? Just let me enjoy the moment.
It's gonna be cool, I promise.
Can I have permanent tranquility running? And you're like, no, all right. Gotta train these evokers
That's
more.
getting into the Infinite Dragonflight, too much time manipulation,
I
Bethany.
see.
I don't, yeah.
So what are the key abilities for augmentation?
Well, they're all key. No,
What are some more key abilities? Graham.
So Ebb and Might, certainly a very important one, right? That's a lot of your contribution. Beyond that, though, their sort of major cooldown is called Breath of Eons. And it actually replaces Deep Breath, and it's bronze-themed, and you fly across the battlefield and sort of put these temporal bombs on enemies that you fly over that then, as your friends deal damage, make the bomb bigger and bigger, then finally explode. So that's a big one, lining up with as your allies are using Combustion or Icy Veins or Dragon Rage if you're with other evokers.
Are they stationary bombs or do they move?
It's a debuff, so
Okay.
it's like you're temporally poisoning enemies that you fly over.
Cool.
And then Augmentation has a new unique empower spell called Upheaval that's Black Dragon themed. And as you empower it and kind of rip the earth apart, it expands the radius of the damaging effect and then does a ton of damage and knocks enemies up into the air. So we've certainly seen some interesting uses of that on the PTR testing.
I saw that.
Yep, sending enemies through the roof. So we've addressed that. Can't send them quite as high, but you can still knock them into the air pretty far.
Thank you for testing the PTR.
Yes, always appreciate it. Those are kind of the two, I'd say, big signature ones, but certainly tons of interesting utility that we've given them, like Bestow Wear and Stone, like Blistering Scales, and really excited to see how players kind of use all those tools and weave them in. I think for me, one of my favorites looks innocuous, but is just fun. It's called Time Skip. And it's one of the capstone abilities in their spec talent tree.
It's a good one.
And says, increase your cooldown rate by 1,000%.
What?
Yep, for 2 seconds.
Oh.
But you channel the might of
Did you
all...
just break the game?
But just the channeling all of that bronze magic around yourself and watching all of your abilities go is incredibly satisfying.
Oh yeah, that sounds satisfying.
It's very cool. So
let's talk about Augmentation Evoker in a group play setting.
Augmentation is all about making your allies better. That's the whole thing. Support playstyle, you're buffing your friends, you bring your own damage a little bit, but making everyone else do more is your primary way of contributing. And we knew that from the start, that it was going to be about buffing others, but we started with a more single target playstyle, if you will. You was pick one best friend and make them as powerful as possible. And that was cool for that friend, but what we found in playtesting was everyone else in the group was like, neat, what about me?
You're doing great.
You're doing so good. So we transitioned it to this more group-oriented playstyle where you're buffing everybody around you and everyone's really excited that you're going to be there. And that became one of our pillars for the spec, was everyone in the group should be stoked that you signed up for their dungeon or that you're in their PvP group. One of the other advantages of going that direction was it really lowered the burden of knowledge to play Augmentation. The idea of, okay, pick which person in your group is going to do the best. It's like, okay, you need to know what all 38 other specializations in the game are capable of, which that's cool for some players, and that's awesome. Once you're more of an expert and want that depth, but as an introductory experience, as an approachable spec, this is the first specialization of this playstyle we've done in the game. We wanted to make sure that anyone could hop in and try it. That's a lot to ask. By making it, yep, Ebb and Might buffs your 4 nearest allies. So in a dungeon, everyone gets it. Don't worry about it. You don't need to know who's going to do what. You're just making them all stronger. With spells like Blistering Scales, it's one of their Black Dragon spells that grants an ally increased armor and sort of an explosive backlash effect when enemies attack them. That, if you're targeting an enemy, will automatically apply to whoever the enemy's attacking. So like, whoever the enemy's attacking will get defenses. Great, don't worry about picking the tank
Less
or...
targeting.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Targeting is one of those things that, to make the spec more approachable, we thought a lot about and are trying a lot of new things. So Ebb and Might targeting people around you, Blistering Scales having the auto-targeting, and so a lot of their buffs do have this automatic targeting capability. So you can stay focused on enemy selection, who should you be dealing damage to, and then when you cast your buffs and your amplifications, they kind of just work. And you're gonna be pretty darn effective doing that. Now, for the ones that are single target, like Blistering Scales, you can override that. You can pick a specific ally. I can buff Stephen, even if Bethany's the one getting punched. But that is something that when you're ready to take that next step and kind of get into the depth and mastery of the specialization, you start doing that. But at a base level, you don't have to click on your party frames or your allies at all to play Augmentation well.
Wow, Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, that does make it a lot easier to just jump into.
Exactly.
Sounds like a lot of easy work for you to figure out, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no problem, super smooth. No, I mean, the team's great. Like, we try a lot of things. Our engineering team is super supportive of, you're doing what now? Okay, we can do that, hold on. So it's been really cool to work through and yeah, take these next steps, and hopefully that stuff we'll see on other classes too of, okay, the blistering scales thing, that worked really well. What if Earth Shield for Shaman can do that? I don't know.
How is it to have multiple augmentation evokers in a raid?
One of the things we thought about really early on, right? You're buffing people. How does this stack? Can it stack? And we talked through that. Okay, maybe we should limit it so you can only have one evoker for every 4 other players and make it so their abilities don't overlap. And the feedback we got from our teammates was like, that isn't fun if me and my friend both want to play it and do a dungeon together and we like can't because we'll be bad. Can you fix it? Like, please try to fix it. So we talked about it, and the path we've gone down now is, yes, all of their buffs stack. Some of that auto-targeting capability, Ebon Might, it will attempt to buff other people in the raid who don't already have it, so sharing the love, making sure everyone gets a piece of the buff pie. But yeah, you can totally bring 2, 3, 4 augmentation evokers to a raid, and you don't need to bring any. I want to clarify that. It's not a new 4th role.
Okay.
It's not, every mythic raid needs one.
Mandatory.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is just, it's another way to play World of Warcraft. It's another damage dealer that if you think this playstyle is fun and you like the kind of emotional satisfaction of making your friends stronger, augmentation, it's for you. You don't like it? Cool, that's okay too, right?
That's perfect.
Yeah.
So when is augmentation available?
Immediately with Fractures in Time. So if you're an existing evoker and you log in, you have the specialization and can play it. If you make a new evoker, you'll unlock it at the same time as Devastation and Preservation in the Forbidden Reach starting experience. So there is that questing with Emberthal and Abyssian to learn more about why augmentation is available and, you know, how did they get these powers back, but it's not necessary to start playing it immediately.
That's good.
Yeah.
Some people just want to go straight in.
Yeah, go run a dungeon, I understand.
What else are you guys excited for in Fractures of Time?
So for me, I think it's the Warlocks being able to be a bunch of new races. So you can be a Night Elf Warlock or a Lightforged Draenei Warlock, which is a little weird, but you know, we have a questing experience.
Love weird.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And along with that, the new pet customization. So new imps and new fell hunters. I'm a sucker for art updates. Being able to like go to the barbershop, pick what my imp looks like, be able to unlock additional ones out in the world and exploring. I think that's super cool. Just play the way you want to play, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's huge because that's been asked for a while too. Players have been like, why can't we customize
Yeah.
our little guys that are
Why
running
can't
with
I
us?
commit to the fell? Like, I get it.
What about you, Stephen?
Yeah, so we talked about Dawn of the Infinite, which is our instance content, but we also have some cool outdoor content. That comes in the form of this concept of time rifts, plays into the theme of alternate timelines, kind of goes along with the theme of the content update, obviously. But we're super excited about some of the cool things players are going to get to see. I'm sure you remember during the Dragonflight campaign, there was a quest line involving an alternate version of Azeroth where Murlocs had taken over.
Yeah.
And players definitely like that as well. So we decided to explore that concept with a few other different factions. So players are going to get a chance to see basically alternate timelines where, for example, the Scourge won, which is very bad.
Yeah, don't like that.
Another one, which is really cool, is this timeline where the Horde and the Alliance never stopped fighting to the point that they sort of were one-upping each other with sort of technology and ultimately just stripped the entire planet of resources. It's a very like dystopian kind of thing. Yeah, so it's, you know, the Blood Horde versus the Great Glorious Alliance, and King Varian Rin has an eye patch and a saw for a hand. And
Wait, we get to see him again and he has an eye patch and a saw for a hand.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
It's
that's
definitely
amazing.
pretty wild. It's something that we're really excited about. The reception, because players have seen some bits and pieces of that info, people are pretty interested in that as well. So kind of the way that those work, you go to an area with a bunch of different people in the open world, you battle some enemy forces, these sort of time rifts are opening up with bad time entities, you know, messing with these alternate timelines, and your goal is to essentially sort of stamp out these bad alternate timelines. And so eventually at the end, you go through these rifts and you go to where sort of the main time entity is, and you defeat it. But what's cool is these time entities take the form of sort of the leader of each faction. So like, for example, with the Scourge, you're going to go to Icecrown and you're going to fight this time entity in the form of the Lich King. So yeah, things like that. So it's definitely a nod to some of our past
I love
stuff,
that.
and we're really excited about that.
Another exciting feature in Fractures in Time is the Kalimdor Cup.
I'm super excited for this, being able to do some dragon riding races in Kalimdor. It is a limited time event coming later in the content update, but being able to finally bring your dragons out in Kalimdor and do some races, I love whenever we add those to the game. As a Dracthyr, I've been able to soar in Kalimdor for a while, but you know, for everyone else, it'd be very cool.
You're spoiled. They also updated the art for the races in Kalimdor, where there's better fog and lighting.
Oh, awesome. I love when we do that.
Yeah, so there's a fog and lighting update as well. So as you're racing through the courses, you can see how cool Kalimdor is just been spruced up a bit.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That about wraps it up for Fractures in Time content update. Thank you both so much for talking about the Mega Dungeon, Dawn of the Infinite, and Augmentation Evoker. You guys, I love deep diving with you, so thank you so much.
This was super fun.
Yeah,
Thank you.
super fun. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for tuning in to WoWCast. I'm your host, Bethany Stout. See you next time.